Good morning and welcome to nominations for the 90th Academy Awards. I'm John Bailey, Governor of the Cinematographers Branch.
Sorry about that. With this year's Oscar nominations being announced and everyone having made their own top 10 best films list of 2017, I was somewhat disappointed to see that almost no one had mentioned or even seen one of my favorite films of last year. A little gem called In This Corner of the World. Now, to be clear, I rarely pick an anime as my year's favorite film, mostly in a year filled with other great competing animated movies. Yeah, no, not that one. Anyways, for some reason, this one really got me. With a cutesy art style, a slow pace, a crowd-funded budget, and a heavy subject matter as a backdrop, you might be tempted to pass on this one. But I guarantee you, if you give this movie a chance, you will not be disappointed. My name is Mike, and this is Impactful Pictures. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you deal with stress, or boredom, or difficult days, or low points in your life? I can imagine everyone has their own method, but do we share any common ones? Like, some people like to go for runs, to get their mind off of things. In my case, I often turn to art. Movies, drawing, music, anything that can, if only temporarily, create this alternate version of reality where life is just a tad more bearable. No, I'm not depressed. That's just what I do. In a time when I found myself seeking refuge in those imaginary worlds, I came across this film. It couldn't have come at a more fitting time because the main protagonist of this film, Suzu, was also trying to escape her reality. Of course, it's kind of hard to compare our lives. I mean, she grew up during the war, she had to deal with air raids, famine, she married a guy she barely knew, and her whole story takes place in and around Hiroshima. So, yeah, you can imagine the kind of struggle she had to endure. But what I love about this film is that it demonstrates how art, and mostly our imagination, can serve as some sort of filter. A coping mechanism, if you will, that softens the impact of traumatic events. Hold on, let me explain. In the case of Suzu, since very little, she was what you'd call a daydreamer. And she'd exercise her imagination on a daily basis through painting and drawing. It's safe to say we all did that. But, as we all know, when you grow up and are given more and more responsibilities, you find less and less time for those activities. Hi! Same goes for Suzu, though her life in comparison took quite a dramatic turn. At the age of 18, she gets married to a man she doesn't know, and as you can imagine, she has a hard time adjusting to this new life of hers. All of a sudden, she's given the responsibility to cook, clean, and basically become this quote-unquote good wife for her husband and her in-laws. The film does not shy away from showing us how mundane some of these activities were. And despite how hard, frustrating, or even boring her life gets, she still manages to keep her imagination alive. In fact, it's that vivid imagination of hers that keeps her going. Not only does it serve as a way for her to escape, but also as a way for her to process information. Essentially, to make sense of what's happening around her. And at times, even to her. This need to flee from reality becomes more and more of a necessity when war breaks out, and she's confronted with the kind of traumas and horrors that you can only imagine during the war. She's the kind of person that during an air raid, for example, she'd see blotches of paint in the sky, rather than explosions. Now you could say she's just completely unaware of what's going on, or even kind of crazy. But I believe it's a way for her to distance herself emotionally from the pain and suffering that comes with war. Well, I'm not going to go into detail about the tragedies in the film because I really want you all to experience it for yourselves. I will say that the film also addresses the limitations of our imagination. Yes, you can try and alleviate the pain by running off to imaginary worlds where things are okay, but there will come a time when you'll have to face reality. If someone dies, at some point, you'll have to come to terms with it. When you accept to marry someone, again, at some point, you'll have to decide whether you want to make this work. Learn to love, learn to compromise, or just give up. It's with those important life lessons that the movie confronts such a daring subject like the bomb. I know many of you are probably dreading the last half an hour of this film. And yes, there's quite a horrific sequence. But it's handled in a way where you don't see it coming. I mean, everyone going into this knows it's gonna happen, but there's no dramatic build-up leading up to it. It just happens. Though what I found very powerful is how the movie just moves on after that horrific scene. It does not linger on the casualties or destruction caused by the bomb. Everyone just had to move on. It's through that pernicious journey that Suzu learns to accept that life isn't always fair. But, and yes, there is a but, it's also important to grab on to the things and people that are good for you and that make life, well, worth living. Now, that being said, give this movie a chance, okay? Experience this time capsule of Hiroshima. Spend some time with the characters, get to know them, get attached. Take in the beautiful hand-drawn animation. Don't be thrown off by the slow pace. Be patient with it. It's a slow burn. And I promise you, by the end of this film, don't be surprised if you feel like someone punched you in the stomach. Okay, maybe that's not the right expression to use to praise a film, but you know what I mean. Just go see it. My name is Mike, and this is Impactful Pictures.